Having a great lawyer in a foreign country is an excellent way to not only learn more about how to live and do business there, but have access to their extended network and just be able to solve a lot of problems. It's a great person to have in your Rolodex, to use an old-fashioned term. And what I've spent the last 12 years or so doing is traveling all around the world and meeting different people, lawyers included, building my network of people who I trust, adding people, removing people. And what I've learned over the years is not every lawyer makes the cut, and there are a couple of mistakes that you'll see coming up again and again that you might not think about if you're living in your home country. I'm going to share them with you now. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson, the author of this book and the founder of Nomad Capitalist, where we help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally go where you're treated best. So let's talk about 3 mistakes people make when they're hiring a lawyer overseas. I'm also going to tell you at the end of this episode why I don't directly refer people to most lawyers that I know. But the first thing that you want to be aware of when hiring a lawyer overseas is that not only can the definition of lawyer differ from country to country, and it may be different or a lower standard than what you're used to at home, but you probably shouldn't expect the same things from lawyers in other countries. This is what I call the projection mistake, where you kind of project the standards, someone who lives in a New York or a Los Angeles or a Sydney, and you want to go to a Tbilisi or a Bogota or any of the kind of places that we talk about, especially in emerging markets. Now, if you want to relocate to London, you can find a decent standard of what you are used to in your home country. But if you're going to one of the more up-and-coming places where things are more affordable, there's more opportunity, perhaps there's more freedom, there is a little bit of a trade-off there. First things first, again, the standard for being a lawyer might be similar to a paralegal in some countries, so you want to be clear, is this person an actual lawyer, the standards that you're used to? Are they a paralegal? Are they just an office assistant? What is it that they do? And in some countries, they use different words for different types of lawyers, so you want to keep that in mind. The other thing that people experience when they go overseas, especially let's say in Latin America, is they'll start emailing lawyers and it will take them a long time to get a response back. Now, I happen to think that it happens in a lot of Western countries as well, where you just email people, and I have a friend who says, what's the rule when you become a lawyer or an accountant that you have to immediately start replying to everybody 1 week later? That is somewhat heightened in some countries. And so even if someone speaks English, which is obviously another common mistake, not everyone's going to speak English everywhere you go. But even if they speak English, even if they're more Western-minded, every country has their own culture that may be more of a slow approach to getting things done. Ethical standards in some of these countries could be different in terms of who are they representing. That's something you have to understand. Is this lawyer actually representing you and entirely you? What are their obligations in terms of talking to the government or talking to various agencies? What is the lawyer-client confidentiality? What are all these things and how does it work? And so what I would tell people is don't just expect that a lawyer in one place is a lawyer in the other. Obviously, there are plenty of professionals around the world, although you may have a much smaller pool to choose from. I have, in some countries, gone through 3 or 4 or 5 different lawyers to find ones that constantly respond, constantly get back to you, keep you in the loop, and you don't have to pull your hair out wondering where they went. That is one of the things that we do here is we test people, we try them out, we find a new program, we work with the lawyer, I'll try it, or we'll have one of our beta testers try it, and just see over time how do people perform, because it is, I guess in a lot of places rare, but I think especially overseas rare to find people who really work at that kind of pace that you would expect if you're coming from a Western country. It is not a matter of simply finding the first person on Google. The second thing that you want to keep in mind is that, and again, this could apply in the Western world, but I see it all the time because I'm here in the belly of the beast, as it were, is expecting that lawyers even know the basic functions of their job. Now, what we do here at Nomad Capitalist is we are sort of a general contractor where the ideal person that we're going to help has a number of different things they want to accomplish. They want to reduce their taxes, they want to get a second passport, they want to make investments, they want to make sure that some of those things can overlap. Maybe the passport is powered by the investment, but yet the investment doesn't screw up the tax savings they're trying to make, and so everything's very holistic. And so all these people need to be managed. One of the challenges people do is they kind of take on their own general contractor work and then try and coordinate the guy in Hong Kong, Dubai, Portugal, and the US to all work together. It's very hard for those guys to speak their language, but part of that is the fact of a lot of these lawyers don't even know their own specialty that well. And this is an issue where we're constantly, again, fighting through and figuring out who actually has the answers. By the way, this is not necessarily a matter of the most prestigious firm. In fact, In the tax and accounting world and the law world, the most prestigious firms, the big names, are often not very good. Because whenever I've talked to people from the Big Four, or whenever I've heard people's experiences from the Big Four in the accounting world, or the very prestigious law firms, international firms, what do I hear? Even from very, very successful people, the entire proposal, the entire presentation was basically them covering their butts and saying, well, don't do this, don't do that. And so a lot of times you'll go to some of these people and they'll tell you, here's what to do, but don't really listen to us and don't hold us responsible if it doesn't work. I've heard that more times than I would like to admit. A lot of times what you want, and this is me speaking as an entrepreneur, is someone who's a bit more entrepreneurial, who has a bit more of an edge. By the way, you see some of these firms, like I see the In-Flight magazine, one of these, again, Big Four firms. Oh, we're taking an entrepreneurial approach. No, you're not. There's not an entrepreneurial bone in your body. So you want some of these firms that are perhaps business-minded. You have somebody who studied in the U.S. or studied in the U.K. and they kind of took some of those principles back. One of the countries that comes to mind is Armenia, where you have a lot of people in the diaspora, and so they kind of bring back that international perspective. There are other countries like that as well. But expecting the lawyer to actually know their subject. We were in one particular country once, and we were interviewing a few lawyers, and we were asking basic questions about how does this work, how does that work, to try and basically shore up our assumptions on everything else we had done. And all we got were vagaries from one particular lawyer. And I said, well, hold on a second. We're working with dozens and dozens of different programs. We have a lot of internal notes, a lot of internal archives. We always have a professional accountant or tax lawyer or lawyer, doing the casework with us when we're implementing cases. But why is it we know more about your program than you do, and we haven't even done that many cases there, and you can't answer the questions? Because there's so much of cover your rear end and also just not knowing stuff, right? And so I think that's definitely something that you want to look out for, is can they even answer the questions? There's a difference, obviously, between someone saying, I'm not going to do everything for you and I want you to hire me first. There's certainly some of that where people don't want to be bothered. So I'm constantly paying people just for advice, including stuff that I throw out a lot. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you have a proper relationship with them and they cannot answer relatively basic questions. We have to evaluate it. That has to be reviewed. That sometimes works, but when you're giving someone the entire facts of the case and they still can't answer, that's something that you want to look out for. And it happens a lot overseas. The third thing that you want to look out for is fees. Specifically, what is the entire fee? My model as a consumer is I just want to know what it costs. I don't really care what a lawyer charges, or I'm doing an office renovation now and I get a quote. My fee will be $15,000. I said, well, that's great. I want to know what the renovation costs. I'm not concerned about the price of lumber. I don't want to get into how sausage is made. I just want to know what's going to cost to renovate this and make it a workable office. Your fee, all the fees, government fees, taxes, delivery, everything, right? And that so often happens in the law where somebody says, here's my fee. And what we've tried to do is we've tried to put together an entire system of, okay, if we're doing a case this way, here's what it costs. If we're doing a case this way, here's what it costs. And what has been very difficult is, again, this is why I test stuff, or we have beta testers test stuff, where they'll say, my fee is $8,000, but then the other fees, there's this and there's this, it'll be $12,000. And then you'll get in there, no, I forgot to tell you, there's a €2,000 government fee. Or I remember I showed up once a couple of years ago, I was doing a residence program, the guy said, did you bring the $5,000 for the bank? I said, you never told me to bring the $5,000 for the bank. I was just kind of testing this out on a whim, and was just kind of flying by the seat of my pants on that one as testing it. He's like, that's a problem. I said, you never told me. And it's like, you also need health insurance. Do you have your health insurance? No. We need to take it. That costs like $300. And so trying to get an entire handle on what does it cost can often be very difficult. I mean, basically, in our experience, we've got to run a whole series of cases to figure out, which is why we do things a certain way that reduces people's risk. But you've got to run the case a couple times to basically make sure you figure out all the fees. Again, going back to the beta tester model and what we do here is ensuring that we have the full fee. Because if I'm helping someone, I'm saying, here's the fee, which is what I want as a consumer. Not, it's this, and then you pay this, and you pay this. You want to know what you're paying going in. You want to know what you're looking forward to going in. You want to know what document. You want to know everything. And that's very difficult to get because most lawyers are concerned. They think in the perspective of, okay, what do I charge? And they don't really think much about, well, what does the consumer want? And so that's definitely a difference between an entrepreneur and most lawyers. And so those are things that I think people get themselves into trouble with. So if you've worked with a lawyer or another professional overseas and you've had an experience that you want to share with us, leave a comment below. I want to hear from you what I'm missing. Now, why don't I generally just simply make a referral to someone? Why don't I say, oh, you want to go to this country? Yeah, call John. The reason, quite frankly, is I think that lawyers, as all of us are conditioned where, if I'm sending someone a lot of different business, and I develop a certain standard for how they should act. There are certain countries where we'll get together people and lawyers will be like taking phone calls during the middle of meetings or taking phone calls at a dinner. It's like, well, that's not really what the people from this country want. If you're coming from the U.S., you don't want to meet someone and the guy interrupts you to take a phone call in the middle of your meeting. So that's a smaller example, perhaps. But the challenge is, if I just say, so often the problem with referrals in any realm where you have a great experience with someone, you've conditioned someone to have a great experience and to create a great experience for those around you, and then you say, hey, you just call them directly, that can be difficult. Obviously, I'm running a business, and all these years of traveling around are worth something, and that's why people come to us here at Nomad Capitalist. But from a non-business perspective, I think the same way that referring your server guy or your payroll person to someone else can be a problem, applies to lawyers overseas as well, that they simply work differently in different circumstances, and if they've been trained properly in one situation, they may not apply somewhere else. Don't stop now. We've got well over 1,000 more videos here on YouTube for you to watch and learn how to go where you're treated best. And if you want to work with Nomad Capitalist personally, go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply, learn about our unique, tried and true process, garnered over years of experience, and learn how you can become our client.